Step inside the dark history of Delaney Plantation, where greed, obsession, and slavery turned a family into victims of one man's ruthless ambition. Discover the shocking true tale that history almost forgot. It's optimized to include. In 1860, just before the storm of the American Civil War, Louisiana was restless. Heat hung over the land like a fever, and the air itself seemed to carry a warning. In the Mississippi Delta, where the sweet smell of cotton drifted through the mist and mixed with the bitter scent of sweat, life depended on the labor of men and women who were never free. Small plantations fought to survive the uncertain economy of the South. A few miles from New Orleans, beyond the marshes and winding rivers, stood the Delaney Plantation, 200 acres of soil that had once promised wealth, but now clung to survival. Clement Delaney, the master of the place, was no grand aristocrat. He owned 15 slaves, a creaking 2-story house, and debts that grew heavier every year. Yet inside those fading wooden walls, something darker than debt was gathering. It began quietly, as desperation, and grew into something monstrous. Clement was 45, with sunburned skin and gray creeping through his hair. He worked beside his slaves to hide how close he was to ruin. His wife Joanna, once lively and gentle, now moved like a ghost through the halls, her face worn by worry. They had 3 living daughters: Arlene, 19, Carolyn, 17, and Frida, 15. Each one reflecting a piece of beauty that poverty could not erase. The family's slaves had been born on the land. Tobias, a strong man of 30, managed the others with reluctant obedience. Leah, a quiet woman of 25, worked in the big house. Life followed a rhythm of heat, toil, and silence until 1858, when blight struck the cotton fields. The crop failed. The Delaneys borrowed, hoping the next harvest would save them. It did not. Clement began gambling, chasing luck that never came. Night after night, he rode into New Orleans and came back with less than he had taken. By 1859, creditors circled like vultures. Well-dressed men arrived from the city with papers in their hands and practiced politeness in their voices. Clement sold 3 slaves to delay the inevitable. The sale stripped something from him. He discovered a kind of power in the act. A cold, emotionless control that frightened even him. When he looked into the eyes of the people he sold, something in him hardened. Dr. Reuben McCormick, the local physician, noticed the change. The quiet farmer grew secretive, brooding over law books and ledgers. He asked strange questions about inheritance, childbirth, and ownership. He studied the laws that defined who was free and who was not. Sheriff Mullins, an old acquaintance, saw guilt in his eyes but mistook it for shame over money. Only Joanna sensed that the sickness in her husband's mind went deeper than debt. Through the winter of 1859, Clement kept to his office, reading slave codes under the dim light of a lantern. His daughters tiptoed past the door, afraid to disturb him. They felt his gaze whenever they entered a room, an examining stare that stripped away their comfort. Even Leah and the house servants noticed. Clement began keeping strange records, asking intrusive questions about age and health. The household grew silent, thick with fear that no one could name. In January 1860, he left for New Orleans. When he returned 3 days later, he carried a locked leather case and spoke of legal advice. No one asked what kind. That spring, he began separating the men and women in the slave quarters and restricting visitors to the plantation. He said it was for safety, but his voice trembled with obsession. Dr. McCormick's last visit came in April. The doctor left disturbed by the man's talk of increasing efficiency and useful offspring. Mullins, the sheriff, came in May while chasing rumors of runaways. He found new locks on the house and cabins, locks that kept people inside rather than out. The slaves avoided his eyes. He left uneasy. By summer, Clement's mind had settled on a single idea that consumed him: In the dusty pages of his law books, he had found an old principle, partus sequitur ventrem. A child follows the condition of the mother. He saw in it a cruel opportunity. If the mother was enslaved, the child was property. He believed he had discovered a way to rebuild his fortune, not through cotton, but through flesh. He met a forger in the French Quarter who could create perfect birth and baptism papers. With such documents, any child could be made a slave on paper, no matter the truth. Clement called it business. In reality, it was the birth of horror. He drew charts, listed names, marked calendars. The people around him became numbers in his ledger. He divided the quarters, choosing who would live where, who would work, who would bear children. He spoke of future generations as if he were planning crops. He tested obedience in his family, cloaking control in words like duty and sacrifice. He used fear and isolation to break resistance. His daughters grew pale and withdrawn. Joanna prayed, but her prayers returned unanswered. Leah and the other women sensed what was coming. They whispered of escape, but the surrounding swamps were merciless. One night, Leah saw Clement in the barn, writing by lamplight. The papers beside him were lists, names of women, dates beside them. The ink shone like blood. By early autumn, Clement believed his plan unstoppable. He tightened his hold over the household, rationed food, and forbade communication. He began what he called the Record of Lineage, a book in which he noted every detail of those he controlled. The entries grew longer and colder. He saw himself as both creator and owner, erasing the boundary between family and property. Joanna confronted him once. She demanded to know what he had become. He told her the plantation would survive no matter the cost. When she threatened to leave, he locked her door and told the servants she was ill. From that moment, she spoke only through her eyes, pleading silently with anyone brave enough to meet them. Months passed in an atmosphere of dread. The fields yielded their harvest, but no one celebrated. The house smelled of fear and medicine. Clement's daughters moved like sleepwalkers. The slaves obeyed his orders with bowed heads, fearing both punishment and the curse that seemed to hang over the land. Then came winter. A cold rain fell for days. The river rose, flooding the lower fields. Tobias, once loyal out of necessity, could no longer bear the weight of silence. One night he broke into Clement's office to steal the keys that locked the quarters. On the desk he found the ledger. Inside were pages filled with names, his own, Leah's, and the 3 Delaney daughters, each followed by calculations, estimated yields, and notes about prices. In that moment, Tobias understood everything. He took the book to Joanna. She read until her hands shook so violently she dropped it. Together they decided to act. Joanna sent Leah to fetch Dr. McCormick under cover of darkness, but the storm made travel impossible, and Clement discovered the theft before dawn. When he burst into the parlor, drenched and wild-eyed, the book lay open on the floor. Joanna stood before it, no longer afraid. For the first time in years, she spoke his name with authority. She told him that what he had done was not only sin, but madness. Clement stared at her as if seeing a stranger. He ranted about survival, legacy, divine right. His words slurred into rage. He struck her, then turned on Tobias. The confrontation that followed ended in chaos. Furniture overturned, candles knocked to the floor, the house filling with smoke and shouting. By the time the sheriff arrived 2 days later, called by neighbors who saw flames on the horizon, Delaney Plantation was a ruin. The main house was half burned. In the yard they found Joanna's body near the well, her hands clutching a torn page of the ledger. Tobias lay wounded but alive, half buried in mud. Clement was gone. Searchers combed the flooded fields and nearby woods for days. They found no trace of him except a trail of footprints leading toward the river and ending abruptly where the bank had collapsed. Some said he drowned. Others whispered he fled south under another name. What remained was the silence of the house and the record of his crimes, soaked with rain and ash. After the war, travelers passing the abandoned plantation spoke of strange sounds, footsteps in the empty hall, the faint cry of a woman near the well. Locals said the land itself refused to grow crops, as if poisoned by what had happened there. The ledger, preserved by the sheriff, became evidence in court when the property was seized. Its final pages, scrawled in a trembling hand, contained only fragments: debt paid, children delivered, salvation through legacy. No one ever learned what he meant by delivered. Years later, Dr. McCormick returned as an old man and stood among the ruins. He said the wind over the fields carried voices that did not rest. The soil had absorbed too much suffering. He closed his eyes and prayed, not for Clement, but for the women and children whose names had become numbers. Today, nothing remains of Delaney Plantation except the cracked foundation stones and a few twisted iron gates swallowed by vines. When rain falls over the Mississippi Delta, the water pools in the shape of the old house, as if remembering where the walls once stood. Locals avoid the place at night. They say the ground murmurs when the wind rises, repeating the same phrase whispered through generations: "No debt is ever worth a soul." And so ends the story of Clement Delaney, a man who sought to save his fortune by destroying everything human within him. The swamp took his body, the earth took his name, and time took the rest. Yet the echo of his choices lingers in the heavy air of Louisiana, a reminder that the deepest darkness in history is not born of ignorance alone, but of the desperate heart that refuses to see mercy when mercy is still possible. Estimated menstrual cycles and predicted birth dates were meticulously recorded in a ledger locked away in Clement's office. These documents revealed the depth of his obsession with maximizing the productivity of his plan. In December 1860, Arlene confirmed her first pregnancy. Clement received the news with cold satisfaction, immediately calculating the expected birth date and the child's potential market value. He began preparing falsified birth documents, contacting Bogard in New Orleans to obtain the necessary paperwork. Carolyn became pregnant in January 1861, followed by Leah in February. Clement was thrilled by the early results, seeing proof that his strategy would succeed. He began considering ways to expand the scheme, including acquiring more female slaves when finances allowed. Frida resisted for longer, but eventually became pregnant in March 1861. Her pregnancy was especially traumatic, as she was the youngest and least physically prepared for motherhood. Clement showed little concern for her health, focusing solely on the potential value of her child. During Frida's pregnancy, he required her to perform specific exercises he believed would improve the baby's quality. Life at Delaney Plantation grew increasingly oppressive as the pregnancies continued. The Delaney daughters were confined to the big house, permitted outside only under strict supervision. Clement claimed this was to protect their valuable cargo, but in truth, it was to prevent escape or outside interference. Dr. McCormick was summoned to examine the pregnant women, but Clement strictly controlled the visits. The doctor was told that the pregnancies resulted from consensual relationships between the Delaney daughters and the slaves. While shocking, this explanation was technically not illegal. To ensure McCormick's silence, Clement offered him a generous $50 per visit, far above normal rates. McCormick, struggling financially, accepted and agreed to maintain absolute discretion. Though disturbed by Clement's story, the extra money was too tempting to refuse. He noted, however, that the women were visibly stressed and traumatized, showing signs of deep depression far beyond what would be expected, even in unplanned pregnancies. Sheriff Mullins occasionally patrolled near the plantation, but Clement carefully avoided any suspicious activity during these visits. Everyone on the plantation had been instructed to maintain appearances and reveal nothing of the reproductive scheme to outsiders. As the pregnancies advanced, Clement prepared for the births. He acquired additional medical supplies and studied childbirth manuals, determined to conduct deliveries without outside assistance whenever possible. This reduced the risk of exposure and eliminated potential witnesses. He also began contacting potential buyers for the children, making trips to New Orleans and presenting himself as a breeder specializing in high-quality products. His contacts were impressed by descriptions of the future babies, especially those of mixed ancestry. The first child was born in June 1861, Arlene's son. The birth was difficult and traumatic, conducted by Clement with minimal help from Laria. Arlene suffered complications that nearly cost her life. Clement was more concerned with the baby's health than hers. Immediately after birth, he separated the child from Arlene, placing him with a slave who had recently lost her own child. Arlene was told she would never see him again, and any attempt at contact would result in severe punishment. Falsified documents from New Orleans arrived a week later, listing a different mother, ensuring the child could legally be sold. Clement was satisfied with the forgery. Confident buyers would not question it. 3 weeks after birth, the baby was sold through intermediaries to a trader in New Orleans for $250. Clement used the money to pay urgent debts and saw the first sale as confirmation of his plan's success. The second child, Caroline's son, was born in August 1861. This birth was even more traumatic, leaving Caroline unconscious for 2 days due to heavy bleeding. Clement, concerned only with the child's survival, saw her medical complications as obstacles. Caroline never fully recovered, developing severe postpartum depression, which Clement dismissed as weakness. When she refused to eat or care for herself, he forced her to take a mixture of herbs he claimed would restore her strength, but which actually contained substances to regulate her reproductive cycle. Caroline's baby was sold in September 1861 for $275, slightly higher due to his European appearance. Clement, pleased with the profit, began considering acquiring more female slaves to expand the operation. Frida gave birth in October 1861, but her young age and frail body made the delivery complicated. The child was premature and weak, requiring special care Clement considered an investment in future market value. Frida suffered permanent physical damage, including injuries affecting future pregnancies. Dr. McCormick, called to assist with complications, expressed concern but was silenced by another payment. The separation from her child was devastating. She begged to keep him, offering to work as a slave in exchange, but Clement refused, claiming maternal feelings were luxuries the family could not afford. Her baby was sold in November 1861 for $225, lower due to fragile health, but still a substantial profit. Leah also gave birth, her child sold without ceremony. As a slave, she had no legal rights, but her emotional suffering was immense. Clement forced her to continue working in the big house days after giving birth, showing total disregard for recovery. Joanna, witnessing the horrors, began showing signs of mental collapse. She tried to intervene for her daughters, but Clement's threats kept her in line. She began drinking secretly to numb the pain and wandered the house at night, whispering desperate prayers for forgiveness for failing to protect her children. The mental health of all women on the plantation deteriorated rapidly. Arlene became catatonic, staring into nothing for hours. Caroline suffered constant nightmares and panic attacks. Frida, the youngest, experienced severe psychological trauma, often hallucinating and speaking to her absent baby as if he were present. Clement saw these symptoms as minor inconveniences affecting reproductive capacity, not human suffering needing care. By December 1861, after months of recovery, Clement forced Arlene into new breeding sessions. She became pregnant again in January 1862, but the second pregnancy threatened both her life and the child. Caroline became pregnant in March 1862, but her weakened condition made the pregnancy dangerous. Dr. McCormick expressed concern, but Clement dismissed him, offering an extra bonus to ensure silence. Frida, still recovering, was forced into the scheme again in April 1862. Her second pregnancy was even more difficult, with early complications irritating Clement, who viewed them as obstacles to efficiency. Winter 1862 brought a darker atmosphere. The women lived in constant fear, never knowing when new sessions would be forced or when their children would be taken. Clement grew obsessive and paranoid, seeing conspiracy in any question of his actions and responding with increasing violence. His transformation from family man to tyrant was complete. His daughters suffered under harsh control. Slaves also endured extreme hardship. Tobias and other men forced into the breeding operations displayed visible trauma, knowing they were unwilling participants in the destruction of the Delaney daughters. In September 1862, Arlene gave birth to her second child, stillborn, due to pregnancy complications. Clement reacted with fury, blaming Arlene for not caring for her health. The death devastated Arlene, who had secretly hoped to finally keep a child. Caroline gave birth in October 1862, nearly dying from severe complications. Dr. McCormick worked tirelessly to save her. It became clear she could not survive another pregnancy. Clement, irritated by reduced output, began seeing Caroline as a depreciated asset. Frida gave birth in November 1862, nearly dying in the process. Though her baby survived, Frida was left permanently weakened. Clement sold the child immediately, showing complete disregard for her condition. By January 1863, the tragedy reached a climax. Frida, unable to endure more suffering and facing the likelihood of forced pregnancies despite her weakened state, made a desperate choice. Leah discovered Frida's body hanging from a makeshift rope in the attic of the big house on a cold January morning. Only 17, Frida had chosen death as her only escape. Clement reacted with chilling coldness, thinking not of grief, but of the operational loss. He calculated the loss of a valuable unit and began considering compensation. Joanna, in contrast, was shattered. Seeing Frida's lifeless body broke something fundamental within her. She knelt beside her daughter that night, whispering apologies and promises to make things right. Frida's funeral was quiet and rushed. Clement insisted on a simple burial, fearing public attention would raise questions. Dr. McCormick issued a death certificate, noting marks suggesting trauma beyond suicide, but Clement explained them away as plantation accidents. Sheriff Mullins investigated superficially, accepting Clement's claim of feminine melancholy. Frida's death was a turning point for Joanna. She began observing her husband's actions closely, documenting the suffering he inflicted. She discreetly contacted trusted slaves, discovering they too were traumatized and eager to resist. Tobias, loyal and protective, became a key ally. Through whispered conversations, Joanna learned other slaves were ready to act, united by shared horror. In February 1863, Arlene was forced into new breeding sessions despite grieving her second child. Clement showed no concern. Caroline, physically unable to endure further pregnancies, was spared but forced to supervise other pregnant women, deepening her trauma. Joanna, witnessing systematic destruction, planned desperate measures. Legal authorities offered no protection, so extreme action became necessary. In April 1863, Joanna met secretly with Tobias and loyal slaves while Clement was away. They discussed taking direct action. Other men, forced into acts against conscience, were willing to help. By May 1863, the slaves were more unified, whispering and cutting conversations short when Clement approached. His paranoia increased, and he tightened security, only fueling resentment. As Arlene's third pregnancy progressed, survival was uncertain. Dr. McCormick warned of serious risk, but Clement focused solely on the unborn child's value. In June 1863, Joanna decided. During one of Clement's absences, she met Tobias and 3 others. They agreed the only way to end the horror was to eliminate Clement. The plan was simple but precise. Clement often returned drunk and unguarded from late-night card games. The opportunity came on a stormy July night. Clement went to a local tavern for cards. Joanna, Tobias, and 2 others waited along the trail to ambush him. Tobias knocked him from his horse while Joanna held the reins. They staged the scene as a robbery, scattering belongings and wounding the horse to suggest banditry. In the lawless times of war, it seemed believable. Clement's body was found the next morning by a passing farmer. Sheriff Mullins accepted the story. Joanna played the grieving widow, weeping real tears for the relief of freeing her daughters. With Clement dead, terror ended. Joanna freed the slaves and began selling the property to care for her daughters. Arlene gave birth to her 3rd child in August 1863, nearly dying, but finally kept the baby. Physical and emotional damage remained. Caroline never fully recovered, developing a lifelong nervous condition, reliving horrors in silence. Arlene bore deep emotional scars, avoiding men and forming no normal relationships. Her baby became her only source of joy. Joanna dedicated herself to her daughters, burdened by guilt over Frida, haunted by what might have been. The truth of Delaney Plantation died with Clement, buried alongside the survivors' secrets. Tobias disappeared, likely moving north to live freely, visiting Joanna once more to express gratitude. Leah settled in New Orleans as a seamstress, never speaking of the past. Dr. McCormick continued practicing, but refused questionable payments, haunted by silent complicity. Sheriff Mullins remained unaware of the full truth. The story of Delaney Plantation is a stark reminder of how desperation and greed corrupt completely. Clement transformed his family into commodities, showing cruelty under slavery extended beyond race. His actions were deliberate, treating daughters as units of production. Laws designed to control enslaved people were twisted to enslave his own family. Representatives of society, like Dr. McCormick and Sheriff Mullins, failed to intervene. The shallow investigations reveal a society designed to protect men like Clement rather than victims. Joanna's final act represents both redemption and tragedy. Her orchestration of Clement's death came too late to save Frida or prevent years of suffering for her other daughters, but it shows that even in desperate situations, human conscience can rise against evil. Tobias and other enslaved people who acted demonstrate how oppression can forge unexpected alliances, united by shared suffering. The surviving daughters' trauma endured, with scars both physical and emotional. Arlene and Carolyn lived as reminders of the horrors they endured. Clement's manipulation of records and sale of children exposes the corruption of the slavery system, where even sacred family bonds could be exploited for profit. Most chilling is Clement's rationalization. He believed he was protecting his family through necessary sacrifices, showing how ordinary people can become monsters when incentives align. Delaney Plantation was eventually sold and broken apart. The main house was torn down in the 1870s. Today, the land grows peaceful crops, as if nature itself tries to erase the past. Official records list Clement as killed by bandits, and Frida as a victim of melancholy, concealing the brutal truth. This story forces confrontation with an uncomfortable reality. Monsters are often fathers, husbands, authority figures who abuse trust. Social respectability can disguise depravity. Joanna's courage teaches the importance of acting against injustice, even when personal cost is high. Her decision to arrange Clement's death was morally complex but necessary. When we hear modern reports of domestic abuse, The Delaney daughters' struggles remind us that victims face disbelief, unhelpful authorities, and ignoring communities. Delaney Plantation remains a story of extreme evil and remarkable resistance, showing eternal vigilance is required to protect the vulnerable. Sometimes justice must be delivered by those society least expects. On quiet nights in the Mississippi Delta, the wind moves through the fields where Delaney Plantation once stood, carrying echoes of the past, not ghosts, but memories of injustices never properly acknowledged. This story reminds us that even in dire circumstances, resistance, redemption, and justice are possible. It teaches that courage can emerge in bleak moments, alliances can form unexpectedly, and moral clarity can triumph over corruption. It compels reflection on choices, systems, and vigilance to prevent repeating cruelty. Evil is not always obvious, protection for the innocent is never guaranteed, and moral responsibility falls on those willing to act when others will not. These lessons, rooted in history, remain relevant, urging society to confront uncomfortable truths and ensure the vulnerable are protected.